Welcome to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. I am your host, Craig Perra, the founder of the Mindful Habit System, and welcome to this podcast to help you create healthy sexuality and a great life. Today, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you're sober, meaning you're not doing the thing, yet your marriage is still a mess. So today we're going to talk about 5 reasons why you're sober, but your marriage is still messed up. And I've got someone here to help me do that. Let me introduce my guest, my speaker, author, coach, a critical member of the Mindful Habit team, a certified Mindful Habit coach, author of the book Habitland, available on Amazon, and currently pursuing his Masters of Social Work. George Morning, welcome to the program, brother.
Welcome, brother. Thanks for having me back here, man.
All right, let's do this. Let's jump in. Now, see, listen, the reason we're doing this, because we work, or men come to us, there's a lot of guys who've stopped doing the thing and like, wait a minute, why is my marriage still a mess? Like, help me, guys. So we're going to talk about those 5 reasons and hopefully give you a target. We're going to go from 5 to 1. So this one is interesting. They're all interesting. Tell me about number 5, George.
Absolutely, brothers. Absolutely. And keep in mind, this is one of the number of reasons why I became a coach here, is because I wanted to save a lot of marriages here. So what's number 5? Here's the one that you guys kind of want to hear. This is your one scapegoat. Is that your wife has not fully recovered from her trauma. She hasn't taken the steps to really recover from her trauma. And let's be honest about this right now. We're not talking about an alcohol addiction. We're not talking about a drug addiction, a gambling addiction. We're talking about sex and porn addiction. The kind of trauma that causes to your wife just immediately in the relationship, and also for her to have to realize some of the patterns that she's been involved prior to you, that's all traumatic to her. And the reality is, unfortunately, no matter how better you get, until she handles her trauma, she won't be able to grow past that moment. You know, Craig, I tell guys all the time, it's like a bad car accident. You know, the car can be repaired, your body can be healed, or you could be driving down the road and hear a screech, and all of a sudden your body is thrusted back into that traumatic moment. You know, we need to take that time individually, and our spouses have to understand that they have to also take some steps to heal the trauma themselves from that addiction and relationship.
Yeah, thank you, George. There's one amazing, wonderful partner said to me, she said, Craig, I feel like I'm addicted to his addiction, meaning I see everything through the lens of his addiction. He forgets to run an errand and I get triggered, and it's like Discovery Day all over again. And this is the reason why we have the partner program, because we believe that the wound of in our cases, decades of lying, decades of manipulation, decades of making them feel bad about themselves. Every partner that I've ever worked with has what I see as stacked trauma. The trauma of the betrayal sitting on top of the traumas of their childhood, their pain. And listen, even if there wasn't anything there from way back then, this is a wound that needs to be treated like a physical injury. Great example. It must be treated proactively. And guys, that's the one you get. There's the one. Now we're going to bring it right back to you, because there's a heck of a lot of things that you can do to help lead your spouse, to support your spouse, understand where your spouse is coming from, and empathize with her. Let's get to number 4.
Number 4, brothers, number 4. All right, so here's the deal with number 4. The reality is that deep down, you're just the super villain from DC Comics called the Black Mask. Now, what do I mean by that, right? The reality is, no, you're not a super villain. You don't lead some underground army that's trying to break the law, but you are hiding behind a mask. And the reality is that even though you're sober, and like Craig said before, you're not doing the deed, it doesn't mean that you fully recovered. So you're still wearing a mask based on the shame, based on the guilt, based on all the judgments you received because of your behavior. And the reality is, guys, is that our wives now want to connect to the real us. They've now been exposed to discovery or disclosure about our behavior, and now they're finally waiting for the real us to step up. And you haven't broken past some of that shame, guilt, your own trauma in history to be able to show her the real you.
Yeah. And I want you guys to remember the problem that you're trying to solve. Okay. If you're trying to solve your porn addiction and sex addiction solely, exclusively by not doing something, you're not showing up in your relationship in a way that not only she wants you to, but in a way that's going to be incredibly rewarding to you. What you're doing is you're treating an intimacy disorder. There's all sorts of reasons why you lie, compartmentalize, lack empathy, why your sexual energy flows so in an unhealthy way, and why it doesn't flow in an unhealthy way. And that's the unmasking. That's what our program is too. I think of this early stages as unmasking, is taking the mask off addict and seeing who is behind the part of you that's numbing, coping, and escaping, sneaking and lying and all these other things. And essentially you're hiding the real authentic you, because that real authentic you has been trained into existence, and this crisis hopefully will give you the opportunity to bring him out. Excellent.
Very good, brother. Absolutely, man. Number 3, guys, let's keep this thing rocking and rolling here, because I want to keep this energy fresh with you guys. Number 3, you've changed the habit, but you haven't changed your lifestyle. What I mean by that, one of the things my ex-wife was famous for telling me was that she's asking for a quarter, but I'm giving her 2 nickels and a dime, meaning that I'm taking what she's saying and I'm giving her what I think is the equivalent. So what did I do when I went into recovery in 2013? I stopped doing the deed, which is what I thought was the main issue. I said, as long as I can stop this, then I can get the rest of my life back. And the reality is, guys, there were so many other areas that this behavior impacted of my life that I didn't address. I didn't address my communication to my relationships that I had around me. I didn't address my own personal health, my outlook on life. I didn't address how I was pursuing different habits and different hobbies in my life. I didn't advance in other areas, whether it was in my career or finances, guys. My life essentially looked the same, except I just stopped doing that one thing. And guys, let me tell you, this behavior, every addiction, from alcoholism to being a workaholic, it's going to not just impact that one area of your life, but it is also going to impact your entire lifestyle. If you make a decision that says, I have to change my lifestyle, then guys, your life isn't going to change.
Yeah, beautiful, George. And to drive home that incredibly important point, to break a habit, you have to make a habit. That is a lifestyle. That is you living a purpose-driven life. That means that the cure to this affliction, this addiction, whatever you want to call it, is the aggressive pursuit of a great life. Thank you, George. What's next?
Okay, guys, here it is right now. You really think we're getting to the part about real work right now. And for the better part, you think you've done enough work by addressing your behavior. Number 2 reason, guys, why your marriage is failing right now, even though you're quote unquote sober, is the simple fact that you haven't invested in your wife's love language. Let's be honest, guys. We're talking about sex and porn right now. We have a twisted, distorted view of sex, of intimacy, of relationships, of connections, of understanding how to demonstrate and give love to the person that we want to spend the rest of our lives with. So we've gone through all this work, quote unquote, on ourselves to stop this behavior, but we're not, again, looking at this and saying, okay, now, how do I really connect with my wife if this isn't just about sex? How do I really connect with my wife if this isn't about just showering her with gifts? You guys know for a fact, listen, if you've been busted, if you've been in discovery mode or disclosure, you know right now that the Valentine's days, the birthdays, the anniversaries, they're not about just the flowers and the balloons. As a matter of fact, your spouse is like, those are all cover-ups from before. I don't want any of that anymore. And now you're sitting there stuck because you're like, well, I don't know what to do to show her that I love her, to be intimate with her outside of what you did beforehand. And I'm telling you guys, you have to be able to invest in a love language. Great website, 5lovelanguages.com. There are disc assessments you guys can do. There's real communication skills you guys can take in order to better connect with your spouse that you have to take the initiative on in order to create that new foundation with your spouse.
The goal has to be a better relationship, deeper relationship, more connected, one where you have used the crisis that brought you to listening to us talk right now, and maybe move you, inspire you to get into some kind of program, anything, whatever it is you're doing, you got to use this crisis to make a better relationship. And that requires really understanding where your wife is coming from, understanding her love language, like George said, and learning to communicate. See, the last point I want to make on this one is you already are trained. You have the habit to or are addicted to disconnecting, to shutting down, to getting defensive, to lacking empathy. Right? These trained conditioned responses have been evolving in you over the course of decades. That's what's got to change. That's what has to change. And understanding her love language and her understanding yours, and that giving you both the ability to communicate in a healthy way where both of your needs are getting met. Mission accomplished. All right, so we're getting to the number one, and I agree with this number one. There's so many layers to this. George, drum roll, please. Number one is you're simply neglecting your wife's trauma. Now, don't confuse this with number 5 in that your wife hasn't addressed her own trauma. This is where you're neglecting the fact that, hey, look, this isn't that traumatic of a thing for my wife. As a matter of fact, I talk to a lot of guys, and they're like, listen, I never slept with another person. I just watched porn. I've heard people who are addicted to drugs. I never stepped out on my wife. I just popped pills. I just drank. I just did this. I just did that. And you're neglecting the fact that what you did still created some measure of trauma for your wife. And your wife is looking at you. Look, me and Craig have both been there at some point where it's like, listen, you need to fix this, because the reality is that your wife doesn't know what she's really going through sometimes. And then when she is going through it, for you to neglect and almost kind of put aside and dismiss what she's feeling because of what you've introduced into the household. Guys, these are the 2 areas here. Communication, understanding the love language, and being able to respect your wife's trauma. For every man that is in this program that I've come across who now has this beautiful, thriving, successful relationship, all the way from Craig all the way down to the men in our program, guys, these 2 areas about being able to communicate in such a much more transparent way, and also being that much more aware of that, listen, I know I can't fix my wife's trauma. Listen carefully, men. We're not asking you to fix anybody. You can't fix your wife's trauma. But if you're neglecting it, that's the part that's going to kill you. When you get to real transparent communication and real acknowledgement and acceptance and awareness of your wife's trauma, well, now you're looking at really catapulting your relationship into places, guys, where, trust me, you never thought it would go from the day you was walking down the aisle. You're literally going to transcend into a brand new relationship. But again, this is the work on you. You can't sit back and rest on number 5 that she ain't taking the right steps. You have to be aware enough to say, you know what? I've been dealing with trauma for a good 20, 30, 40. Craig, look, we got men 60, 70 years old that are just joining the program. They've been dealing with trauma that they haven't addressed for decades in their life. You've been married for a couple years to a decade or 2. And you're wondering your wife why she hasn't gotten over it yet when you're reaching this point in your life and you're just now dealing with it. You have to respect the fact that your wife is struggling as you're struggling as well. And just because you get healed and just because you go into recovery and now you're sober,
that doesn't mean that she is going to be on the same pace, the same track, the same routine as you to get to that point. She has to take her necessary steps the same way it took you to make the necessary steps to get here. If it took you 30 years to make it to this podcast, to be a part of the program, to seek the help you need, no matter how you did it, realistically, guys, are you really upset that your wife is still in trauma and hurting after 2 weeks, after 2 months, after 2 years? You got to acknowledge that, man. You have to acknowledge that.
Yeah, thank you, George. And I want to acknowledge how hard it is to, I want to start just how hard it is to acknowledge that, because in order to connect with her pain, and every time you do is just happens to be another reminder of what a piece of shit you are and all your failures and how bad of a person you are. In fact, if you haven't listened yet, brother, I highly recommend you listen to my podcast on betrayal trauma. And I use one word to describe at least the impact of my behavior. And the word that I use is, it's abusive. When you aggregate, add up the lies, the manipulations, the trickery, and how they have internalized the lack of spark. They feel ugly. They feel disgusting. They feel scared. They feel not loved and not supported. There's so much pain there. And so to acknowledge it is to be reminded of your shortcomings. But if you can shift from letting that be a source of self-deprecation and self-loathing, but instead be a source of inspiration, knowing that this is you making it right. This is you strengthening the marriage. This is you supporting her and getting her, helping her get her needs met, leading her as she's in pain. Because listen, however she's reacting, let's pretend I'm going to use a hypothetical where your spouse is acting in a way that 99 people out of 100 would objectively say, whoa, man, that's tough. I'm so sorry about that, brother. How would she be reacting if you were able to connect with her pain? If she knew that you saw her, that you felt her, that you see her pain, she wouldn't be reacting like that. Or she certainly wouldn't be reacting in that extreme. So there's self-interest here too, brother, because I know you want peace and joy and love. You got to work for it.
It's work, man, but I'm here to tell you, it is some of the best work that you'll ever do in your life. You know, one of the great parts about this program, man, is that we got it on all ends of the spectrum here. We got Craig, he's married right now. And then we got me, guys. Listen, I'm divorced. And let me tell you, I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and be the one that points the finger. Like, if I was able to know these pieces, know these tools ahead of time, I can't begin to imagine where that relationship might be. The opportunity now is that I get to take this into the next one that I come across. But for you men out there right now, guys, I need you all to stop dropping the ball at the 5-yard line. You think you did it just because you stopped doing it. But just because you stop doing it, that only gives you the ability to do more. These are the 5 more things, guys, that you got to do. Really the 4. Number 5, that's about her. Let it be about her. That's fine. But the other 4 areas, man, that's where you get to say, okay, boom. And guess what? I just said 5-yard line. 4 things, guys. That get you to the 99-yard line. You're looking for one more step. Let her be okay with that one step. But if you don't take the 4, it doesn't matter what she does with her trauma. If you're not willing to invest in the communication, it doesn't matter how great she comes across. If you don't change your lifestyle, it doesn't matter about her healing through her trauma. If you neglect the fact that she's been in traumatic relationships, or she's in a traumatic one, like Craig said, abusive relationships, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, with you, even physically, guys, you're still dropping the ball. Keep your homes, men. if it's really worth it to you, which we all know it is, you're going to fight for it. And this is the best way you're going to be able to fight for your home.
Awesome. Thank you, George. So for you, brothers, if you are looking to fight in a very deliberate, intentional, structured way from home, just want to put that out there, guys. The Mindful Habit System, we are entirely online and by phone in our group coaching program. To not take advantage of this situation, we're actually lowering our prices. I've got at least 10 deep scholarships that I'm offering, 5 from the last podcast. Those are gone. 5 from this podcast, maybe even more, depending upon the response. We want to help you. We know people are nervous about going to meetings. So I want you to go to themindfulhabit.com. There's an opportunity to connect with me. There's a phone number there. Call it. My receptionist is waiting for your call. George, how can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely, brother. You can always email me, george@themindfulhabit.com. We're actually going to provide a link here in the description, guys, that will allow you to schedule some time. You just want to be able to talk. You want to have a couple minutes to be able to say, okay, I'm ready to make these steps. How do I start making these steps? You're going to see a link down there. Set up some time. We're going to go ahead and talk it out. And then last but not least, guys, listen, if you're not quite sure what direction you want to go into, guys, aside from the link to get in contact with me, go ahead, get a free copy of my book. It discusses what I went through while I was married, the things I heard from my wife, what it took for me to get to this space, to be able to meet with you guys right here, guys. Either way, the goal of this is for you to take action. Join the program, set some time to talk, take advantage of the freaking scholarships that's here, man. Like, I didn't have that. Take advantage of the scholarships, guys. Set some time to talk, or just grab some great literature, guys, to help you guys get to the next step. Either way, take action.
Embrace your power of choice and feed the right wolf inside you. Craig Perra signing off from The Mindful Habit. Thank you, George. Bye, everybody.
Love you, brothers. Keep kicking ass.